Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone, if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Metissa Hampton on the podcast. She's a queen of 5-star nutrition in Fort Bliss. She's also a physique competitor coming to us all the way from Texas. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Metissa, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we got your name right. So we were having a little trouble before then. But before we get into your journey, I just wanted to press myself even more than I already am right now. What's the weather like in Texas right now?
It is cloudy. It's raining. Well, an El Paso desert rain, I guess is a good way to put it. So it basically means that it's sprinkling, just enough to mess up your car that's clean.
I'm not even going to mention what it's like here because I don't want to bring the entire mood down. So before we just get depressed from my winter woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle?
Oh man, so that is kind of a long story, but I'll give you the short version. So
hey, you can go as long as you want.
Oh, it's kind of boring actually, but more or less, I was a young college kid. Went to college at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas, and I met a soldier. Was dating the soldier, became engaged to the soldier, and then he deployed. During his deployment, I was a full-time college student and getting ready to be a wife. So I basically started going to the gym to give myself something to do. Propped up my iPad late at night at Anytime Fitness, which is now a Baskin Robbins, believe it or not, they actually closed it. And I actually was using YouTube tutorials to literally teach myself how to work out. And then he came back and we kind of kept doing it together. He never got into the competitive aspect of it and he kind of fell by the wayside, and he and I actually are no longer married. Several years down the later road, we got divorced, but I got fit. I got real fit. And then I was like, hey, I think I want to compete. So I hired a coach out of Topeka, Kansas, or Kansas City, Kansas, I'm sorry, and Lawrence, Kansas, to be exact, kind of a suburb. Decided that I was going to be a bikini competitor. Was a horrible bikini competitor, was not good at it at all. I was too big. Ended up kind of rerouting, refocusing. Ended up relocating to El Paso, Texas a couple years later. Got here, started going to a little dungeon hole in the wall powerlifting gym that literally is one of the strongest gym. Actually, it is the strongest gym in West Texas. And I had a set of eyes on me that saw a lot of potential in me. And he's like, hey, let's do this. Became a powerlifter, went from powerlifting back to the stage. And now I kind of hybrid between the two of them and kind of do both. So that's kind of how that got started.
That's awesome. Well, I got to say, I did a baseball showcase actually at Kansas State my junior year, and that was really cool. I liked being down there, and I was thinking about maybe going there, but yeah, that ended up not working out. But yeah, it's a really nice town. I really enjoyed spending time there over the weekend. But when you were getting started working out, I mean, I ask this question for every single guest that I have on. I mean, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, people's diets, their nutritions, what exercises they do, how many reps they do. So many little things add up to the overall package. And, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you. What was that like for you, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body, knowing that, each body is so different and stuff works better for different things?
Oh man, that is a lot of trial and error. Trial and error. I preach it all the time. You can have the best set of eyes on you and they still not know what works best for you. So, the beginning of my journey was a lot of me doing it. My first coach, I say the word coach very lightly, didn't teach me the right ways. And, having a bad experience like that with a coach that you're paying, definitely can put a bad taste in your mouth, and it can actually, kind of ruin the sport and ruin the enjoyment for it. And it kind of did in the beginning. And that's kind of where I, had to refocus and started doing it for myself again and training myself how I wanted to be trained and not limiting my body to a certain size. And, we just kind of rolled with it. But yeah, trial and error, hands down, trial and error.
Well, I always like to compare it to sort of like being a mad scientist where you're just trying to concoct your own potion to figure out, what works best in yourself. And I like to compare it also to like Edison too, where it's like the guy took like 1,400 tries to make a light bulb, and it's like he finally was able to find it. The amount of times that I talked to people, especially in our generation, who want everything now and they want it yesterday, where it's like, this is not something that you want to get into if you want that, though, because it takes so much trial and error, so much dedication and time management that is relied on this. So I think it really is especially unique for people in our generation to do this sport, because knowing that, how a lot of people think. But a question that I love to ask too, because everyone's genetics are different, and I think so many people in this day and age, especially with all this technology where everyone can see everything, people want to look like a different person. They don't realize that they can't look like that person. They just can look like the best version of themselves. But I always say, when you first walk into the gym, everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much at all. And then everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind, that they have to train to oblivion to get it to catch up to everything. I mean, I'll give you my examples first. My back, just because, all throughout college, I had jobs in warehouses where, you basically you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those were like the two options that were presented to you. I'm also 6'3", so I mean, my lower body is just absolutely shot, where I mean, I have to train it into oblivion to get it to look any semblance like I work it. I mean, even this last week I went to the gym, and a couple of my buddies were like, "Hey Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year?" I'm just like, you guys saw me do it the day before. So I was like, come on guys. And calves are the worst for me. Like I always said, I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow an ounce. Like I don't understand it. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
So when I was getting started, I think it's just that stigma around women being lower body dominant and having, your glutes and having your hams and having your quads or thighs. I hate the word thighs. I think that's such an improper term. It's a quad. And I think that most women lack upper body. So I training legs for me is not really as, I guess, much of a priority as like training my back or my chest. Recently, especially in women's physique, there's a lot of chest action that you don't get to see in like bikini and figure and stuff like that. So same with women's bodybuilding, they actually have to have developed pecs. And I think that, legs for me, legs will grow like this. I mean, I can literally do lunges down my driveway twice and I'll have a quad pump. But my back, my chest, recently my delts, I'm bi-dominant. My biceps are really big compared to my delts. And it shows in just about every single stage shot that I ever have had. So yeah, anything upper body. But I think women are scared to train upper body. So I think that if you actually have a good upper body, I mean, you're already ahead of the
Yeah,
competition.
I'll have a picture of her arms up there when she's talking about it, just so that everyone can just be like, "Holy crap! Yeah, that's just absolutely ridiculous." So yeah, that's yeah, just adding to my overall mood and just making me feel bad. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, that's so awesome, because I love asking that, because like you talked about, so many of the women that I have on, it's always, "Oh yeah, my upper body really, I don't, it's not that big, and my lower body, I like to train that." So I love people that go against those stigmas, because yeah, I mean, how you're born doesn't determine what you should train in a gym. I mean, I understand why people feel that way, but it's honestly one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. But that leads me perfectly into the number one stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast. And we talked about this right before we started recording. I mean, it's gotten better with Instagram, but there's just still so many women that still have that fear ingrained in them, that if I go to the gym and I don't do anything other than cardio, I'm gonna beef up and turn into the Incredible Hulk, overnight. And I wish that I had that type of confidence in myself, that like I would be able to do that, because I would be, who knows where I'd be at right now. But unfortunately for so many people, that is not the case. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I can guarantee you hear that probably hundreds of times a year. How do you like to respond to that?
So, when I first started, no, that wasn't an issue. But with what I do, as far as a career, I run a supplement nutrition shop here on Fort Bliss, which is an army base here on Fort Bliss, and there's a lot of that with women, and it literally comes down to misleading information, more or less. Because I mean, if you look at it and if you do the, like, I guess the backstory, like the research on it, you will know that a woman's hormones and a male's hormones are two totally different things. So, I mean, women can train just like a man, but they're never going to have male characteristics without hormone manipulation. So there's a lot of that twisted. A lot of normal, I call them lifestyle training people, or just people that go to the gym in general just for a healthy lifestyle. If they turn and they look at a competitor, that's like false pretenses, more or less. So, they're looking at something that isn't achievable to their standard. So, like, I mean, even now, like if you look at a stage shot from someone and then look at 3 days later, water manipulation is enough to, make that look totally different. So it's just misleading information. magazines don't help, media doesn't help, social media dang sure doesn't help. So just things like that. So yeah, I get asked that a lot, and it's one of those things where you have to tread lightly because it's very I take it offensively to an extent, but then they can also take my answer offensively as well. And I try to be that neutral ground, because I don't like to make people mad. I guess is a good way to put it.
Oh yeah, well, and I'm not as in shape as I used to be, but I still am. But I remember even when I was like that, I didn't take offense to it just because I knew that it was coming from a place of like they don't know any better, and that's just how they do it. But I think the one thing that I really hate about that, I think also sort of perpetuates that, is you get this person out of like every 10,000 people, the genetic freak that like has never lifted a day in their lives. I have a friend who's just like that. He can eat 10 Snickers bars a day. He won't gain an ounce of fat, and just it's like, dude, I hate you so much, and like you've never trained, and he just looks amazing the entire time. And I think I mean, I'm gonna get angry just even talking about it because he knows that I like him, and yeah, Andrew, you're a good guy, but dude, seriously, I hope that someone's just playing a cruel joke on you, and eventually it's all gonna catch up to him like one overnight. But I don't, unfortunately, I don't think that's gonna happen. But when you were getting into bodybuilding, what would you say is probably the biggest nutritional change that you had to make from your diet before you started this lifestyle to where it's at right now?
Oh man, that's interesting as well, because I mean it changes. It's still evolving, I guess is a good way to put it. When I first started, and if you scroll back on my Instagram far enough, literally like down a couple years back, you can see how I used to meal prep. Okay. And I'm talking like maybe like 2 ounces of chicken, like a third a cup of rice, and like three sprigs of asparagus, like there's nutrition is the foundation of absolutely everything, hands down. I will preach nutrition before I preach supplementation, training, any of that, all day, every day. But I think that there's so many once again, misleading information when it comes to what's healthy, what's good, what it's going to do for you, all the above. The basics never fail. And I think that's something that I was too focused on the trends back then, like the trends of, having fruit with every meal, or what is it, acai bowls, things like that, that are just horrible for you. They look good, but they're horrible for you. Um, Not only that, I'm from a super small town in Kansas. Okay. So, meat and potatoes, like red meat potatoes every night for dinner. Like my dad was a steak and potato kind of man, and we had that. So we have like that down home, good home cooked food that is absolutely horrible for you. I love my mom to death, and she's an amazing cook. And that did rub off on me, thank goodness. But when it comes down to it, what tastes good always isn't what's best for you, but you can make something good for you taste good as well. So I think a lot of that was getting away from the trends.
Yeah, speaking of those trends, I had a friend that tried an only liquid diet, and I'm not even gonna get into that. Like that was just
Oh,
I was like, dude, I was like, come on, man. Like, what? He lasted for about a week, and then I was like, okay, yeah, like let's be honest. You need it, yeah. But you just see all these trads and all these trends and all these fads, and you're just like, I don't get how they come to be. But again, like we were talking about, for the individual person, it's different. I mean, some people eat different things, and it's why you just, I mean, getting help is amazing, but you have to also do it by yourself too, part of it, just to figure it
absolutely.
out. So yeah, I mean, I can't stress that enough. But I like to talk about, for first preps, I always like to talk about, because most people don't realize that to be able to get into shape to go on a prep takes so much hard work, dedication, determination, that 99% of the general public won't be able to do it. But going on a prep, you are notching things up to an extreme where, I mean, your diet has to be perfect. You have to get all of your workouts in, no excuses. This basically becomes your life. I mean, your life revolves around getting ready to go on stage. What was that adjustment like for you the first time, and how has that changed as your career's gone on?
So, first time was I think everyone's first show is never what they expect it to be, because they don't know. They're literally walking down a black dark hallway, and they're blind pretty much with their hands out in front of them. So, um, a lot of that was consistency, but most people want to get better with their prep. My first prep, I kind of went backwards a little bit. And that was stress induced. That was, I was a college student. That was, I had bad coaching. There were several things like that that ended up happening. But as time progressed, I got a little bit more serious into it. And so they're one of those things where you can hire the best of the best nutritionist or coach, and you can have your meals prepped for you, and you can do all of that. But unless you are doing everything behind the scenes on your part, you're not going to be 100% your best. And that was something, a lot of ownership that I had to take, that I wasn't my best because of me. It wasn't something that my trainer didn't do right, or my coach didn't do right, or, my meal preps didn't do right. It was me. And I think this last prep compared to the one before that, that was probably my biggest thing, was literally looking in the mirror and saying, hey, my success is in my hands. I have to do it. I can't say that I gave my everything and not expect and not be happy with the outcome. So I think that was the biggest thing. But not only that, this last prep for sure. That's a funny story how I even started prepping for that show. I was actually supposed to be prepping for a powerlifting competition. And that powerlifting competition was this weekend. So I would have been competing this weekend in Houston, Texas. But I was my strongest that I'd ever been. And I was ready to put numbers up and ready to just squash my last numbers that I did. Ended up getting hurt, light injury, nothing horrible, but it was enough for me to pull the prep and say, hey, I can't do this anymore. We're going to go back to the stage for a little bit. So I started bodybuilding prep right away. That was something that I started counting everything. Literally, there was not a day that I did not track a meal in my fitness pal. And it literally came down to, once again, trial and error, but I started early enough out that it was okay. But yeah, that it gets tedious. It gets really, really tedious. But just like you have to train your body to lift a certain way and to look a certain way, you have to train your body to eat as well. So I always tell people that nutrition is everything.
Oh,
Everything.
I mean, when everyone says, it's 20% in the gym and 80% what you eat, I mean, I couldn't agree with it more, because I cannot tell you how many guys I know where it's like, yeah, I work out, 5 days a week, but, I'm not seeing results. And it's like, well, I know for a fact from your Snapchat that you go out and drink 4 nights a week too, and
Yep.
you're eating burgers 3 times a week too, and that you're doing all that. So it's like, you might want to cut down a little bit on that. But as someone who, I mean, the night before I have someone on a podcast, I do scroll through their Instagram and see, and you have made a significant amount of change the last year, I'd say, like musculature wise. I mean, you've gotten a lot bigger over the last year. What do you think has made that difference for you over the past year, as opposed to maybe the couple of years before when you were just starting?
Mindset. It really goes back to that mindset. I am in a much better place now in the last year, 2 years, mentally, emotionally, physically, than I have been before. But not only that, it goes back to that ownership, that accountability, that I can't get upset at the results that I don't get from the work I don't do. So I preach that all day, every day. But not only that, my nutrition has been a lot more on point. I will say that my training has always been the same. Ever since I've lived in El Paso, I've had the exact same, like, actual trainer, my strength coach. Um, he keeps everything the same, and he challenges me every single day. He sees me 6 to 7 days a week, and I'm probably not his favorite person to see, but I am consistently there. And we definitely have made the challenge. We've made the changes together for sure.
Showing up is definitely half the battle. I mean, I always say, once you take that first step into the gym, it is almost impossible to walk out of it without getting a workout in. So yeah,
That is correct.
just like with most things in life. But the biggest thing that I was shocked by when I first started this podcast, but now I understand it 100% why. I mean, the general public, I don't think, doesn't understand this, but for a lot of these athletes, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than their nutrition. It's harder than the working out. I mean, I compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
I am horrible. I am horrible. That is something that, when it comes down to weaknesses, that is hands down my biggest weakness. Um, I was a damn good bikini poser. I will give it that. I have a whole lot of, sass and all of that. But when it comes to the more technical poses, mandatories kill me. Mandatories, quarter turns, they absolutely kill me. Um, and I don't do my due diligence. I guess this is my fault. Once again, me taking ownership and accountability for
Hey, I
my
appreciate that
slack.
I appreciate, because most of our guests don't take ownership, but she is definitely taking ownership. So I
Oh,
respect this so much.
it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So I do, leading up, this last prep, I guess we'll just use this last prep as, like, my baseline, because that's like what I'm starting as my starting point moving forward, I guess. Um, I did quarter turns every morning when I first woke up. Check-in photos every morning when I first woke up. Um, Now, when it came down to routines and, like, everything else, that was literally, I started that about 6 weeks out. I'd get up super duper early and drive to my gym, which is literally about 20 minutes away from my house. And I would drive there fasted, half dead, literally in the morning. And I'd full blown get on my suit, do all that stuff, do it in our little posing room, which our posing room isn't really a posing room. It's like two mirrors that have a bunch of machines around it. And there's like a little area to where you do it. Like I said, we're a hole in the wall dungeon. So we work with what we got. But it got better this show than it was the last show. But that is something that definitely needs to be evolving. And it doesn't help that I don't do it right now. I'll admit it. I off season, I don't do it. So yeah, maybe after this we'll work on that a little bit.
Hey, it's again, it's always about constantly improving. But out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Honestly, front double bi is my favorite. It is absolutely my favorite. Um, why? Biceps,
I
man. I'm
can I
probably
can give you
dominant.
I can give the audience two reasons why it's their favorite. Yeah.
I say my biceps. That's why. And then my least favorite, back double bi, which is never really anyone's least favorite. Or you probably have never heard that before because I know the last podcast
a
I
couple
watched of
times,
yours,
a
it was
couple of times I've heard it. A couple of
see,
times, but not. It's
I
rare.
hate it. Why? You can never see yourself from the back. Photos don't do it justice, but not only that, my back's my weak point, and no one wants to show their weak point.
Yep.
That's why.
I always said if I ever competed, the back would be my favorite, just because you can let your smile down a little bit. You don't have to be, you know. But I have had guests that have come on and said, like, hey, I let my smile down for like 5 seconds and I got points docked off. But that's why I always say, other than the fact that you're going to be more sore than any other point in your life after a show, just because the body's not meant to be in a flex state for that long. Your jaw muscles are probably going to be the most sore out of everything, just because you got to lay that smile down. But obviously, as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, being from the upper Midwest and, having my thick Norwegian skin where, I mean, I go outside, I get burnt to an absolute crisp, or I just get farmer's tan where, let's be honest, everyone, that is not a real tan, but bodybuilders get to get tan. So I've always, wanted maybe just for one day, just to try getting that tan on. But we've heard so many stories about, how you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that like for you?
It's really surreal. Anyone that's ever prepping for a show, your body's making the most changes, literally like visible changes, the last like 3 to 4 weeks out. And then that last week of that water manipulation or depletion or whatever you want to call it, that's where, you literally are like, oh my gosh, like I never thought I looked like this. Like I always freak out. I always freak out about that month mark out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready. I'm not going to be ready. I don't look good, blah, 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 blah. Like everybody goes through that phase. But, the second they put that first coat on, you're like, okay, all right. Coat number two, you're like, wow, this is really me. I make the executive decision to actually get tanned here in El Paso before I go, at least with a base coat. Why? Because I trust the people here that do it. Not only that, and it saves me a little bit of time. But yeah, you're sitting there and you just look completely solid like the whole time. Like it's great. It's absolutely great.
I always say the one negative thing though with that is that you can't really sit on anything, you can't really lean up against anything when you have that stuff on. So just on the checklist of things that go on in these, or just what the sport requires. I mean, that's definitely one of them. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be up and coming bands and musicians, or bodybuilders for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you walk up on stage and show off, or I mean, and perform live in front of hundreds of thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders. What is that like for you when you get to show up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months to years upon years on?
That is, it several things. So first off, I have stage fright. I'm nervous. Probably couldn't tell because I talk to people all day, see people all day. It's just me. But anytime you're there, so first off, bodybuilding is like one of the only things, in my opinion, that you literally are you're giving people permission to judge you. First off, judge you based on what you look like. So that's kind of like something that I was never really into, but clearly I'm doing it. So it's kind of, one of those things. But when you first walk out in the first lineup, right? So that's different. Everybody else is standing beside you. So you can't really see prejudging. You can never really see. There's not really that many people in the audience, whatever. But it's the night show. So like the routine, everything like that. First off, all you want to do is drink water. So you're ready to just get it over with, right? After that, you literally are just like, oh my gosh, can they see me right? You never know where your placement is. You want to make sure that everybody can see you. You want to make sure you're not turned too far this way, turned too far that way. I mean, it's just there's a lot of things that go through your mind, and it goes so fast. It's like, man, I prepped for 20 weeks to be on stage for 2.5 minutes, like, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
That's
It's
what
definitely worth it.
Well, that's what I always say too. It's like, yeah, they prep for so long just to be on, and that just again makes it so much more impressive. Just all that hard work and dedication that goes into getting on that stage when you're only on there. I mean, like the bands that I've had on, they go on for like 2 hours, and then it's like, yeah, and they do it, like once a week or 2 times a week, and it's like for bodybuilding, that's once. And then you might have like 2 or 3 more shows the rest of the year, but other than that, it's like that's so again that just shows just that dedication and that drive that you need to have in order to do this sport. But we already got me drooling, basically talking about what she was cooking, but now I got to ask, what is your go-to post-show meal?
I am really weird when it comes to that. Um, I really just want to drink everything. So it's literally water, Gatorade, vitamins, Pedialyte. Now, when it comes to food, you crave so many things during prep, but after the show, you're so tired, you're so thirsty. I mean, I really just do like a burger, and then the next day we go right back on prep, and we go right back to reverse dieting, I guess is the proper term. Um, but yeah, I don't really eat horrible post show because you feel horrible if you eat horrible, especially when you're in such a depleted state. Now, I do once, like usually on the car ride home, I'll munch on some candy or some donuts or like here or there, but like I can't really do like a whole pizza. I can't really do anything like that. So usually it's the liquid that gets me.
Here's the only part of the podcast where I judge you. What is your go-to flavor of Gatorade?
So this is gonna sound really weird. You probably haven't even had it because you're so far away, but there's like a chili lime or like a chili cucumber one. And
Cucumber.
I yeah, so keep in mind I'm right by Mexico. So the Mexico border is like within it's right in my city. So a lot of things are very Hispanic influenced, and they have like a chili lime cucumber Gatorade, and that's actually really good.
Yeah, I've never tried. I'd want to try that, but for me, you can't go just fruit punch. Can't really go anything. I mean, that's I'm basic like that, and I'm willing to admit it. But I always said if I ever competed, I would just rent out a Five Guys and just with like $1,000 and just be like, hey, I'm buying you out till I either puke or pass out. But either way, I'm getting my money's worth. I'm getting my money's worth
That's
in it. But
right.
but you brought it up, and I love to talk about it too because there's so many things that people I think aren't aware of when they first start following people on Instagram. The health and fitness people. Probably the biggest one that I get all the time, even from friends, is that they don't believe that you guys can't maintain that look year round because so many people, I think just because, they might be showing photos of what they look like, in their off season, they might show some prep photos just to, just because, just to keep, the positive vibes for people that are trying. And I think a lot of people also, when they see shows like Biggest Loser or Big Brother, or no, yes, see shows like Biggest Loser, I should say, where people just go on and they just lose a ton of weight and they're able to keep it off. I think a lot of people associate that with bodybuilding too, where they just think, hey, if they can keep the weight off, these bodybuilders that work their butt off, they can still maintain that look. But what was that experience like for you when you first learned? I mean, you're not going to be able to look this way 24/7. And there are a lot of people that try, but it usually shortens their career and it really is not healthy for you to be at that low of a body fat percentage and be at that, that look for an extended period of time. But what was that like when you realized you are going to have to put on weight and that all that hard work that you put into it, I mean, you can't maintain it?
The first time that I witnessed or that I experienced that, it was more or less kind of surreal. Keep in mind it was bikini and I was a little too soft to begin with, and that type of thing. But I guess recently, you always look your best. I either depending on how you peak and if you peak correctly, the day before, the day of, or the day after. But usually the week after a show is when you add the water weight back on. That's one of those things where it's hard to see those changes um, and not mentally like screw you up. But it has gotten easier because my thing is like you get better every show. So if you get that way, that show, next time it's going to even be better. So the post show rebound is even going to be better. So mentally, it's very difficult, especially in photos. I hate check in photos, absolutely hate check in photos. I hate check in photos in your show suit. I hate that because that suit is never going to fit the way that it does the week of peak week, especially the post week after a show. You're going to look like a busted can of biscuits. I don't care what anybody says. Water weight is going to add maybe 10 to 15 pounds and it's going to show. So it's hard to see, but it's part of it. And if you can't deal with the post show, then I don't feel like you should be on stage.
Absolutely. And I like to compare it to like starting a business where you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean,
That's very true.
those two just go hand in hand. But two of the questions that I love to ask all the guests that I have on are, obviously, I mean, there's so many positive changes that happen, especially to me, when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing is that, I mean, you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars of bottled water, anything that's sealed on tight. You're the go-to person for that. I'm also still at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out. And every time they come in with groceries, I basically got to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries. Has that been a similar experience with you where people just take one look at you and they just assume that you can do favors for them?
Yeah, kind of. Um, People's thing now, like, I guess it happens with where I work and what I do for a living. I work in a very male dominated industry, so my whole staff is male. Pretty much there's only a handful of girls that work for the company. And my thing is that people ask me to arm wrestle all the time. All the time. And it's even there's been instances where, I'd go out with my friends like when I first moved here, and we'd literally be out at a bar and they'd ask me to arm wrestle for money and just stupid stuff like that. Recently, believe it or not, I actually got an email, a personal email in my personal email account. Strange, very, very strange, about someone that was wanted to pay me to wrestle them. Didn't really feel comfortable with that one. Didn't really respond either. But that's it's not so much helping them lift things or move things. It's more or less, I guess, challenging me, like squaring up to me. And I'm not a very, believe it or not, I'm actually pretty small. People think I'm a lot bigger than I am. So I think through Instagram, people think that I'm this really big mass monster, and I'm literally like 5'2". I weigh like 150 pounds, so I'm really not that big. But yeah, people ask me to arm wrestle, and
It got to a
how much
point
I
where
bench, and
well, for me, it got to a point where I couldn't even go to bars like in college, just because I knew that that was
yep,
what was going to happen. Where I was just like, yeah, it's yeah. So I totally understand that. And yeah, I mean, well, this question then leads perfectly into it because I always say for guys they have enough problems as it is when it comes to clothing options for guys that are in shape, but for women it's almost near to impossible. I mean, I always say if you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time. That I mean, good luck finding that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited, and the fact that you basically have to have two wardrobes, your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe too?
that's very true. So um, my thing is, which has gotten better. It's gotten a lot better. I follow a lot of IFBB pros that are very fashion forward. So I order a lot of clothing from websites like that are more stretch. There's a lot more stretch to things. But it gets rough, when, you see something like I not literally happened a couple weeks ago. I was walking through the mall looking for a dress for a Christmas party. And you see something in the window on a mannequin, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is it." You try it on, and you look like a sack of potatoes. Like we just don't look correct in certain things. That's hard. It's very discouraging. But I can say, as I have gotten bigger, I've also leaned down. So my upper body will forever be my challenge. My lower body, not so much. My waist is small, and if you can find stretch pants, you're golden. I'm a firm believer in that. If it doesn't have four-way stretch, I ain't buying it. But when it comes to tops, button down's not a thing. Sleeves are really, really hard. I wear a lot of tank tops, but I also wear a lot of cardigans. You'll never see me in public. Like if I go to the grocery store, if I go to the mall, you'll never see me in public in just a tank top. I will always have something over. It just stops people from looking too, so that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that like I always say, you become like a human art exhibit if you walk out like in a tank top.
Hmm.
Basically, I mean, you're not going to be able. You become like a mini celebrity, but it's like yeah, everyone is staring. But since you live in a region that's like you said is a lot has a lot of Hispanic culture, and we've had a couple of Hispanic bodybuilders. How would you say their reaction is to bodybuilding as opposed to if you go to any place else in the country and it might be a little bit different culture wise?
So very accepting. There's several pros that are so El Paso, Texas is like bordering Juarez, Mexico. So they actually have a really well-known bodybuilding gym in Mexico that actually has a lot of IFBB pros. So it's not really unheard of down there, but it's more of the Americans that have an issue with things. There's a couple pros here in El Paso that are local, but when it comes down to it, it's not the norm. It's not the norm. And El Paso is a big, small city. So pretty sure most people know me as the blonde white girl that's buff. But it's okay. I've been here long enough to where I just fit that and I run with it. But yeah, other places you go, especially when traveling, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people say that, like going through airports, stuff like that, you get stared at a lot. Um, you get stared at a lot everywhere you go, pretty much. But it's one of those things where some days you're in the mood for it, and some days you're like, hey, look, like I just want to get my groceries and go home, like that type of stuff. So that's kind of rough, but it's not so bad.
I'd have a few days too where I'd be like, yeah, check it out. It's all right. You know, it's free stuff. Yeah, I'd be doing that. I'd be doing that a couple of days, but yeah, I'd have other days too. I was like, yeah, just don't. I was like, come on, buddy, just. I can understand why celebrities some days, you know, they have those bad days with photographers and stuff like that. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's like it's a mini experience with that. But what also when it comes to this, just this lifestyle, a thing that most people don't realize is that you can lose friends, and it really does impact your social life sometimes. What has that been like for you?
Well, oh God, I knew this question was gonna arise. So I'm gonna sound like a total loser when I talk about this. So I am pretty much a lone wolf, you know. And I think that's another thing when it comes down to where I was a couple years ago, like when I first moved here, was going through a divorce, had a bunch of new friends. My friends were in the fitness lifestyle. I literally met every single one of them in my gym. And they weren't competitive, they weren't athletes, they didn't want to have achievable goals, they just wanted to be healthy. And you know, it's I always tell people your biggest weakness is yourself when it comes down to it. So you are more likely to justify doing something that's not going to benefit you rather than anybody else. So it's like, oh, you know, I'm just going to the gym to work out to be healthy. I can justify myself eating a full pizza because, you know, I'm just going to go to the gym later. But for me, it's not really that. That's not the case. So I definitely think that personal relationships and friendships, romantically inclined or not, definitely held me back in the past. And I'm really open about that. So yeah, I definitely have had um, relationships, friendship and non-friendship that have hindered my progress. And I think moving forward, that is one thing that I'm okay with because no one is going to get what I want for me. I have to do it. So it's okay to not have friends and to lose friends, but it's also not okay to have people in your life that don't support what you do.
No, I couldn't agree more, and that's an answer that we hear of all the time. But and I just find it fascinating with this lifestyle. I mean, so many people just have so many misconceptions about it that they don't understand, and I think that just leads to unwanted friction that really is it really is. It's really avoidable. Like if people really did their research. But you mentioned that you follow a lot of IFBB pros. Who would you say is the one that you look up to the most?
Oh, man, that's rough. Because there's so many. There's different reasons I look up to them. I guess is a good way to put it. So now, let me think. So the first one that I'm going to throw out there because I have known her before she was pro. Worked out with her in Fayetteville, North Carolina, when I was a teeny tiny little bikini girl. Um, Cami Spindle, or Cami Leal, as other people know by her, or Cam exclusive, I guess, on IG. She's one of the realest people you will ever meet. And I think if you have been following her or anybody has followed her through the past couple of years, they will see the transformation of Cami then to Cami now. And I think that's what I look up to her the most for. Um, she's a very vivacious person and I absolutely love it. Now, other than that, she's not an IFBB pro yet. I'm going to throw the word yet out there. Heather Munson. If you don't know who Heather Munson is, look her up. She is a women's bodybuilder. I'm sorry. Haha, she's a heavyweight. She's about 5'2". This girl is just jacked, quads out the wazoo. But her soul, she is so kind and so uplifting. Talk to her many times. The look on your face tells me you know who she is,
Well,
or
no,
you
I
might.
think isn't see, so I've had like 300 guests on, and like 200 of them have been bodybuilders. I might have actually had her on. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna have to check. But like that just goes to show how many people I've had on that. Like I hear a name that's familiar. I was like, did I actually talk to him? Like I'm not. But if I didn't, I think I know who you're talking about. Like that name sounds
Yeah.
familiar. So both those people, if I haven't had them on, if you better best believe that I'm gonna send them a message asking if they want to come on. But according to your Instagram, you are the queen of 5-star nutrition in Fort Bliss, and you were talking about that right when we were getting started. What would you say is probably the biggest nutritional thing that the general public gets wrong?
This is gonna sound funny when I say this. Low carb, low carb. Um, so 5-star nutrition in general, if you guys don't know what it is, I definitely challenge you to check it out. It is a very great company. This company has changed my life. I will just go ahead and throw that out there. I'm very passionate about what I do with that company. I feel like we definitely impact and change lives. But when it comes down to it, I talk about how I preach nutrition. my store and my staff and my team and other stores and other staffs and other teams do the exact same thing. We want success. We are goal driven. Like that is a company initiative. A company core value is we drive results. That's what it is. So when it comes down to it, we are the first to write meal plans for people. I probably write more meal plans in a week than most people write in their lifetime. And it literally is educational 110%. But I have so many people that come into me and they're like, they're not losing weight. So we have like a body composition scan in our stores. Every single store has one. And it's a great guideline. It's an absolute great guideline to see where you're at, where the progress is being made, all the above. Now, my thing is when people come in and they don't see progress, or their numbers dip the other way, or they go backwards towards their goals or whatever, that is where I come in and I'm like, hey, look, like we dissect the situation. 9 times out of 10, people are falling down on the nutrition side of things. Now, with nutrition side of things, that's when you really have to dig into it, you know. And my one scenario sticks out to me that happened a couple months back, and it was someone came in and their numbers had been consistently, you know, opposite of what they wanted it to be. And you know, that's where I kind of have to hold my customers accountable at that point. And I'm like, hey, you know, like what are you doing that's getting you these results or not getting the results that you want? And you know, we dissected the nutrition side of things, and this person had told me they were on no to low carb everything, and I said, okay, awesome, let's go ahead and you tell me exactly what you ate yesterday. And we broke it down and I plugged it into like, you know, like a macro counter app, and their carb intake was over 300 and they didn't think it was any. And I'm like, okay, I said, so that right there, carbs are not the enemy, but there's carbs hidden in everything, absolutely everything, and people don't know that. But not only that, keto keto diets. That's another thing that people don't get. You're either keto or you're not keto. You're not kind of keto. So we see that a lot. I see that a lot, but that's where the backstory and that's where the education comes into effect when it comes to helping people. Yeah, because the nutrition, or I guess the food industry is very misleading. It's very, very misleading.
Yep.
Breaks a lot of hearts.
Oh, again, yeah, just as someone who, I mean, I used to work nights, so I mean, I'm talking, I love having people that, like, you know, start working out early in the morning because I go to bed. I used to go to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning because I'd get home, but that's even the worst, I think, for people that work nights, because I remember getting off work and, you know, McDonald's is like the only thing that's open. You know, you can't really, I mean, people's nutritional options can be very limited, you know, at other times. And yeah, like we're talking about, that is just such a vast part of working out and, you know, adapting a healthy and fit lifestyle. So yeah, if just find that. And again, like everything that we talked about so far, it is trial and error. And people are going to get upset. You're going to get upset because you're not going to find it the first time. And if you do, good, I mean, more power to you, but it is going to take some time for people to find out, you know, what works best for them. But now if someone were to walk up to you and say, you know, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
That's a rough one. You know, it's been, man, I don't know. I think that's really rough. I think that's really rough. That's very hard to say. And the
I can
women,
give you mine first, and then you can think about it while we're
yeah, go ahead and do
yeah.
that because I'm sitting here. There's so many things.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the one thing that I've heard of all the time is, you know, obviously, I always say, like, if you were to compete in shows in back-to-back weeks, the first week the judges might want you a little bit more of a leaner look, and then the next week they might want a little bit more of a fuller look. So it's just like to have a baseline of what they want in a look, because it really does depend on every show, you know, what they want for a look. So it's like, yeah, good luck, you know, if you get second place in that lean show, good luck putting on a ton of weight or getting a little bit more of a fuller look in that 1 week to go into that next show. So just to have, like I was talking about, like a little more of a baseline where the judges are like, this is what we want to look like, or this is exactly what we want. Because so many judges, I mean, they can be a little bipolar at times in what they want, or just the judging system. So that's one that I hear of all the time.
So yeah, that can kind of be true. But not only that, I think that there needs to be this happened recently. I guess me and some friends were talking about it, but when it comes to, you know, you always have, especially on the amateur side, you won't see it on the pro side, but you'll see it on the amateur side, where you'll have a athlete that will compete in a category that they don't fit the description. They don't fit the dredging criteria. Um, And I'm not.
they'll have someone that looks like you going into a bikini show, basically. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Or actually, it's actually reversed that. So usually you'll have somebody that's going to be on the smaller end of the spectrum, like the bikini or figure side, trying to do the women's physique, women's bodybuilding. And it didn't used to bother me because I have so much respect for anybody and everybody that does it, that gets on stage, does a prep, whatever. But my thing is like, I'm there to win. Okay. Just like everybody else and every other women's physique and women's bodybuilder and figure and bikini girl is there to win. And it's kind of a disrespect thing, in my opinion. I can see, especially on a nationals level. I'm sorry, nationals level, um, where you have a girl that doesn't fit the category, but she's up there competing, and I'm all about the transformations, and I'm all about that. What is the WBFF has that transformation category? That's phenomenal. Like, I have so much respect for those people, but when it comes down to it, you have the girl that literally is trying to go pro, that's there to qualify or there for like a pre-show leading up to her national show, and then you have the girl standing beside her that literally took her bikini heels off and just jumped on stage because she wanted to do another class. I think that's disrespectful to the people that actually work hard for that size, for that muscle. Um, that's, I think, what I would change is that there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with the judges saying, hey, you don't fit this category, we're moving you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that's something that they probably should do, but never will. But yeah, that's how I see that.
For anyone who's wondering what that visually looks like, let's just say it's like someone who's going into a compete against everyone else who has about 30 to 50 pounds of more muscle than they have, basically. And that's literally what it looks like. That's like me right now going and competing at a guy's bodybuilding show, and just, yeah, it wouldn't end up well at all. But yeah, I totally agree with that. That's one thing that we hear of all the time. But one thing that I find so fascinating about the female bodybuilding community that's a little bit different than the men's is that with the females, everyone is so supportive of each other, it seems like. I mean, if you go on Instagram, you see all these positive comments from like all these posts, and you see, videos of backstage where everyone really seems to be getting along. How important is that camaraderie to you, and knowing that people do genuinely care about you that are competing against you?
So that, you see it. I'm not really sure about the bikini and figure side of it, but women's physique, women's bodybuilding, it's huge. And I think that's because it's such a small community. Um, the girls I named previously, they've been actually really big motivators to me. Um, and that's a huge thing to me, a huge thing, because we're very much like the outcast, I guess you could say. Um, so it definitely helps to have the people that are on your same team in your same corner as well. So, or whether you're competing against them or not, that's very legit to see, and it's very genuine. It's not fake. Um, and if you ever go to a show and you ever see women's physique, women's bodybuilding, the I guess the vibe, the feel that you see between the competitors is 10 times different than what you see between the other divisions. And that's just, I think it's because they know the struggle. They know the struggle. It's a little bit more difficult than other stuff. It takes a lot of time to put size on, and a lot of time to look that way and work that hard. And I think they understand it a little bit more.
Oh, 100%. It's night and day between even figure and physique, what it takes to get into that. But they are coming up with a wellness division. What are your thoughts on that? How do you think that that's going to turn out to be?
I have a very unpopular opinion on that, probably.
Hey, I'm more than willing to
um,
hear it. We've heard both on either side. So yeah.
um, my thing is it's just another division for another division to make shows longer. In my opinion, I look at it this way. So you have men's physique, classic physique, bodybuilding, 3. Now in women, you used to have bikini, figure, bodybuilding. So then you have bikini, figure, physique, bodybuilding. Now you have bikini, wellness, figure, physique, bodybuilding. Like, how many categories do we need? How many? So that right there is, I don't agree with it, but it doesn't affect me because I'm not going to do it. I think that there are certain people that will absolutely demolish it. I know one of my teammates, I saw pictures of her wellness prep. I think she's going to freaking kill it. And I think it's just going to be her adapting her lower halves, beefing it up a little bit to absolutely, slay the stage. But I think that, in my opinion, man, if you go to a show, the 2 biggest divisions always are going
Bring
to
a
be
sleeping bag if you go
bikini.
to a show, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, it's going to be bikini, and it's going to be men's physique 9 times out of 10. Um, but I think that wellness will be one of those other really, really large classes because I think you'll have the figure girls dropping and then the bikini girls moving up. And then I think they'll cross over. So you'll see that one girl 2 to 3 times potentially if they have crossovers. So like for myself, I couldn't cross over. I could not cross down. First off, I can't walk in heels to save my life. Second of all, I'm too small to move up. So it's like I'm stuck in my division, but that's also where I want to be. So I think that's just it's just people, it's just a more stage time for them, I guess. But for the other side of the realm, it's going to be a little bit of a nuisance, but we'll see.
Well, and a complaint that we've heard from a lot of IFBB physique pros is that they were fearful that it's going to basically become bodybuilding the way that it's been going, where they kept wanting bigger and bigger. But where do you think that physique is going, and do you think that it's going to basically become like a second bodybuilding category?
I don't. I don't. And the reason why I think that is I want you to look at Shanique Grant. Okay. She went in, she became pro at what, like 19, super young. God, I used to follow her physique like crazy. And she was a figure girl. She was a figure girl. And she fit that category. She slayed that, man. She had that right. Her ratios were on point, her symmetry was on point, her posing, her stage presence was on point. And then she moved up to women's physique. In my opinion, her physique has gotten smaller over, like the physique, I guess, standard has gotten smaller. So you look at, when I think of women's physique, like a couple years ago, I think of Michaela Aycock. She's somebody that I really look up to because her physique is absolutely phenomenal.
And she's younger than both of us, which even pisses me off even
Right?
more.
Yeah. God, she's just like a freak of nature, and I absolutely love her so much. But she moved up to women's bodybuilding. So I think that women's physique has actually gotten smaller, but I also think women's bodybuilding is starting to evolve back over to what it used to be, to an extent where they are having more size, but women's physique is kind of downsizing and they're coming in a little smaller with the muscle maturity, I guess is a good way to put it. But yeah, I say Shanique Grant has a phenomenal physique, but she's smaller than, I think of like the Dana Lynn Bailey era, or what was the girl that beat Dana? Juliana? I can't remember her last name.
Malacarne?
Like, yes, her freaking legs were just
Yeah.
massive. And she was very like women's physique esque. And then Shanique came and just like totally demolished her on stage. And that's where you started to see that changeover to where it started to get smaller, started to get more compact, I guess is a good way, because she still has size, but more compact. But I'm a huge fan of women's bodybuilding. And honestly, if I had the size and I was a little bit older, we'd be there.
I just can't, like, for anyone who's wondering what Michaela Aycock looks like, I'll have a photo up there, but basically, like, it's someone who has pushed their limit to, like, it's like, I don't think she could ever get any bigger, because it's like, it's insane. Like, you look at her workouts, but she works her butt off. You look on her Instagram page, I check up on, like, once a week, and I've been trying to get her on the podcast, but she's been doing other things. But yeah, it's just insane what the human body is capable of. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Oh, man. Well, hopefully I am talking to you a year from today. But honestly, this is something that I've kind of had not announced yet, but I guess publicly, I guess. But this year we are going to be doing a national show, and I hope that this time next year, around the end of December, I definitely hope to have placed at a national show, if not be a pro. I feel like that's the next step. I'm a pro card chaser officially. If you asked me a year ago, I would not have said that. I just said I was just trying to compete and have fun and do what I love. And I definitely think that the drive is there now. The consistency is there. I have the right people in my corner and the right people on my team, and I think that it's closer than I think, but still far enough away to where I have to overstretch a little bit. So hopefully next year I will be a pro, if not close.
Well, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck in that. And I just say, if you have that same progress that you had this last year, I mean, there's no way that you're not going to be a pro. But yeah, yeah, honestly, just keep it up. But is there anyone that you wanted to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I will. So I'm going to go ahead and give a huge shout out to Tony Diaz and Ishmael or Mayo Hernandez. They have been, I'm going to cry. Here we go. They're my gym family, hands down. Literally, they have led the way for this. They make it possible to do what I do. Tony owns the gym. Maya's been my strength coach for the last 2-3 years. Not only that, I'll give a shout out to Shelby Starnes. Shelby Starnes is doing my nutrition for this next year. So those of you that don't know who Shelby Stearns is, please look him up. I feel like I'm in good hands with him and Mayo, that combination there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So nothing crazy.
And that's awesome. And one of the last questions I love to ask, because I always say, I mean, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, wow, you look amazing, I want to get in shape too. So many people struggle with just, first off, finding that motivation to get started in a weight loss journey or just making that lifestyle change. But for so many people too, like we are talking about, just taking that first step into the gym is so hard for them. What advice do you like to give people just to get started on that journey?
You just got to do it. You just got to do it. There will be so many people that will tell you you can't. And that is the truth. That is the hard, honest truth. There are days you don't want to do it. There are days where laying on the sofa feels so much better. But your best investment when it comes to that is yourself. And you just have to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, you guys, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast because I mean, it was just so great. And I love having people come on and share their stories. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
No, I mean, we're pretty straightforward here.
Yeah, and again, we wish you nothing but the best of luck. And I mean, I cannot say enough that I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.